Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco, dishing out on movies. The only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here once again. I laugh every time I say it's just Marco here once again, because it's like, it's almost like at this point it's self-explanatory that most of these videos are just me. So I don't know, should I keep saying that? Okay. So I didn't know what to do today, so I watched this movie last week, and I watched it just to see someone in it. I didn't really watch it because I was interested in the film itself, but I saw it on Tubi, and I was like, this movie's pretty bad, and it's funny too, and it's like funny in like a good bad way, and it's almost like it's like The Room but with gangsta stuff in it. And if that sounds good to you, then I would recommend checking this movie out on Tubi. It's called The Female Hustler, and it's right there. It's only an hour and 23 minutes, and it goes by really quickly sometimes. And so I just wanted to talk about that movie because there were so many bad things in it that I went back and I took notes. I watched it a second time today. I watched it and I took a bunch of notes about just all these little things that I noticed that made the movie just that much more funnier. So starting off, and this is going to be spoiler heavy, obviously. Well, I guess I'll do a non-spoiler thing first. Basically, this movie is, I'm not going to say that it's cheap, because honestly, it does a like a 70% good job at using what it has to make what it made. So I think that it did a good job in terms of like using the budget to make a good movie. You know, it was only like a $50,000 budget, and with $50,000, it was pretty good for that amount of money. There were only a couple of things that made it seem really cheap. Like there were these couple of things like a voiceover stuff with the audio, and then whenever someone got shot, it was like a cartoon. I mean, they would just have this like gun and then like go bam bam, and it was this fake sound, and there was no blood or anything, and it looked so fake. But there wasn't a lot of that stuff in it, honestly, so I'll give it that. It did a good job in terms of using its budget. And the plot, though, this movie is a plot-heavy movie. It is so into its plot. It's got this fill-in-the-blank gangster story, and it really isn't a full story. It's like, it's multiple stories. It's so disjointed. And at the end of the movie, you don't even feel like a movie has been done. You feel like there's a sequel coming. Like this whole movie was a trailer. And in terms of trailers, this movie has a lot of shots that are like shots from a trailer. Like a lot of the shots in the film, they're like, okay, you cut there, and it looks like, this is a trailer of a movie. It's kind of like Suicide Squad in that way. And the music was bad. The acting was mixed. There were some good and bad actors. Princess, the main character, she was okay, but she had a lot of bad moments. And she gave off, and I'm going to talk about this in the spoiler, she gave off the feeling of complete disinterest and complete like in her first scene, she's like yelling, but she's like not really like emoting that much, so her face really isn't that moving, and so it looks really really bad. But the acting is really hit and miss with this one, And the story, once again, it's pretty lame. And if it wasn't for all these funny things in it, like these funny, good, bad things, this movie would be one of the worst movies of the year. But honestly, since it has so many good, bad qualities, I would say that it's better than a lot of the bad movies this year. Like, it's not going to be, probably not, it's probably not going to be in the top 10 worst of the year. And that's surprising because there's a lot of bad movies this year. And when you rank bad movies, you gotta try to be nice and try to find some good things to say, like, oh, I like that little thing. Otherwise, you're just gonna be sitting there like making a top 50 bad movies, because nowadays we just get bad movies. We don't get good ones. And when we do, they're like just okay. So we're really in a movie rut. We're in a movie apocalypse. And, you got little filmmakers like this guy who are like trying to build something back up, but it's really hard because it's a lot of pressure. You have a movie like this, and you don't make it for a lot. You have to compromise with a lot of things. You have to get actors who, especially I know because I'm also in Ohio, quite near where this was filmed. And, you got to compromise. You got to get all these actors who, they might not necessarily be the best actors, but they're the closest to you. And so they cost the least to work with. And, in terms of locations, everything, like, making a movie is there's a lot of moving parts to it. And if you don't get all those moving parts at least okay, the movie completely falls apart. And, I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. It's the unfortunate reality. Like, if you watch a movie like Night of the Living Dead, for instance, the original one, that movie is pretty poorly made, but all the parts of it are good. All of the parts that you can add them up and say that part's good, the music's good, the acting is good, the story is good. The effects are pretty good. The setting is really good. The cinematography is pretty good. But if one of those parts lags, and in this movie, the parts are all over the place, because the story is basically the main focus of the movie. The movie doesn't really care about the character or the anything other than this story is happening and it's going on. It's a fun story, and the story. So it suffers from that. It suffers from just being so story based that it doesn't really make itself. It has a lot of story, but it doesn't really have a lot of plot. If that makes any sense. Like, I don't know. I just thought that it was so disjointed. And it's unfortunate because there are quite a few good things to say about it. And then there's also a lot of bad things that are funny. So I want to get to those bad things because this movie was pretty bad. But it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. And I would recommend it because I had a good time watching it both times that I watched it. The first time was harder because the first time I felt like the movie was just dragging on, and I felt almost like I was binge watching a TV series. I would rate this movie a McDonald's Happy Meal. And I know that sounds harsh as well, but this movie's very fake. It's got a lot of ambition, and the ambition doesn't pay off because you got these big stories going on with these big criminal enterprises. But then the movie comes off as very fake and very funny and bad, and just you can't take it seriously. You end up with a cartoon essentially, like a kid's Happy Meal. And it's bad for you too because it's got a lot of bad stuff about it bad qualities, bad technical stuff, bad substance stuff, stuff that, like, the writing, the dialogue. And so you feel bad after eating the Happy Meal because Happy Meals are bad for you. That's this movie. It's a Happy Meal. That's all I could say. And now I want to get to the notes because it's hard to talk about this movie. It's so... when you have a plot-based movie, you really can't do a lot of generic talking about it. You got to get into the plot. And I want to get into the plot. In the opening scene, there's this girl... Oh, sorry about that. I got to read all the notes that I wrote, and so I apologize for the inconvenience with the audio with that. In the opening scene, there's this girl, I guess he's her pimp, and she's massaging him constantly, and he's jerking around, and she just can't stop massaging him with one hand. It's really distracting, and it's like, what? And then the director, and I'll say this, he has an obsession with big, fat, black asses. Like, and I'm not saying, like, fat, like, in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, just big, black asses. Don't clip that. Any chance he gets to show it, he does. I mean, it's almost like their asses are characters within themselves. Or maybe it's just amateurish camera movement, because he'll zoom in on their ass and then move up to their face. And it's like, you have Princess and she's working at the gas station. And what do? They start off and it's just this, like, zoomed in shot on her ass. And then they move the camera up to her face and she's, like, stocking shelves. And it's like, what the fuck? It's really weird. And there's a lot of close-ups and cuts rather than letting the movie play out in a wide picture. And that's another consistent problem with indie movies, is that they have a lot of close-ups and a lot of obscured angles instead of having, like, a wide scene. And it's funny because the wide shots in this movie, those shots are the better shots in the film. Like, there's this scene near the end that I'll talk about where these guys, these two henchmen, they're in a car, and the window is foggy, and you see cars driving in the background, and it looks almost like a dream. And it's a really cool shot, but then you have shots like that one that I talked about where, it's like, oh, look, she's working at a gas station. Here's her big ass. And, they gave her, like, the tightest pants possible for, like, maximum hotness. And, like, just, they were like, what's your size, princess? And she was like, I wear a size large. And they were like, oh, you wear a size medium? I mean, that's what it felt like with her character, especially the gas station clerk outfit. Maybe it was symbolic, maybe they wanted it to be like, oh, she's so constrained by her life that she's wearing these tight clothes. And then later on in the movie, she's wearing these dresses and big flamboyant hats and everything, and those aren't tight. So I don't know. I have no idea. And honestly, I don't want to know because, it's not a problem. I'm just pointing it out how funny it is. Like, there's no problem with me. I don't have an issue with it or anything, but I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, and he pretty much just had an obsession with her ass. I mean, there was no other really character in the film who displayed it as much as she did. And it was a lot of the shots, especially in the opening part of the film, was like, in order for you to get to know Princess, you have to get to know her ass as well. That was kind of like a rule with the film. It's like, you got to get to know her ass too. There's this really cringeworthy editing program that they used, or I guess not really a program, but like a template. And they really overused it. They used it in the beginning. They used it in the end. and it was like it freezes the frame and makes everything look like a drawing, and then there's like this film reel framing, and then there's this weird like font that looks like it's like this is like a wedding video. I mean, it reminds me a lot of iMovie. Like this was edited with iMovie. Then there's this really hilarious sex scene that's like straight out of the room. Well, it feels straight out of the room. And there's this moment where Princess's brother is really pile driving his girlfriend. And it's really funny. I mean, he's on top of her, and you know, she's naked, but she's face down, and he's naked too, and like the blanket is in between them, and you can clearly tell it's fake, but it's so funny. He's just like going, ugh, ugh, ugh. It's so funny. It just comes out of nowhere, this sex scene. And it feels like it's a trailer montage as well. Like, it's really... That's probably one of the funniest sex scenes I've ever seen. It's just out of nowhere. It's like this pan into the bedroom, and they're having sex and everything, they're doing it, and then it's like, ugh, ugh, and he's pile driving her. It's really... And the soundtrack is really bad. I mean, the score... I think that the original score was okay in the small parts that it was used, but the soundtrack just felt like a radio station changing songs the whole movie. I understood because some of the lyrics, they fit the story, I guess, but the overall feeling that the music gave was just very mediocre. It really took me out of the film the first time I watched it because it was like you're driving in a car, you're changing the radio. It was funny because some of the actors who were in smaller roles were better than the ones with more screen time. The main actress who played Princess, she came off as really disinterested for most of the movie, especially the first scene between her and her brother. Although I could excuse it maybe because they were hopefully trying to show, and I'm speculating here, they were trying to show that she's exhausted and she's not fulfilled from her life at the moment. But then the rest of the movie, she just keeps that same energy basically. It's really funny. The movie itself looks pretty good. The color isn't sucked out, which I really appreciated. They had some nice differences in colors in the different settings. Like you have one setting and it had one look, and you had another setting, it had another color palette to it, and I really liked that about this movie. So it looked pretty good overall. The movie is dealing with heavy material too, but the plot moves so fast you can't take everything in. The movie is plot heavy, and it surprises you by saying chapter 2 at one point. Like, I just thought this was one movie. I didn't know it was like chapter 1 and chapter 2. I liked Omar quite a bit at first. He had a really fake and smooth persona that covered up his real intentions. And he did a pretty good job at first. But then as the movie goes on, he basically becomes a mustache-twirling supervillain. Maybe he should have stayed a good guy because he wasn't a good villain at all. There's some really bad moments where you can tell clearly that there's voiceover work done, and that really took out of the film. It was really used with Princess the most. In fact, I think like 90% of the voiceover. The funniest part of the movie for sure is this hilarious scene where Omar takes her into his little apartment, and he's like, this is secret. No one can know what goes on here in this, Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and your life is going to change forever. But then he opens the door, and they have this slow motion and this music to try to make it seem cool and badass and like, ooh, ah. But then it's revealed that, like, it's this hilarious little setting with 3 people pretend working at a table and playing cards. It's really... I mean, that reveal, it's like nobody can know what goes on in here. And then you just see this table of 3 people. They're, one of them, he's like this crappy, like, white nerd guy, and he's pretend typing, and it looks so bad. That was really bad. And then I thought that Diamond is pretty good, but I'm just biased because I think she's hot. So yeah, she did a good job, pretty much. Their criminal enterprise consists of them stealing like data, and they have this like algorithm going on. It's kind of confusing. It's basically like a scam. One of the worst lines I've heard all year is algorithms, and then the response is alga who? I thought that was retarded. I mean, everyone knows what algorithms are. I mean, even if you don't know what it is exactly, I mean, hasn't everyone heard of the term algorithm one time? Like, who would really say algo who? Like, that was bizarre. But they're stealing money from these big corporations, so they're quote not doing anything wrong, and they're just stealing money from these big corporations with this algorithm. Like, okay. There are a lot of funny shots when you can tell they're trying to emulate bigger gangster movies. Like, there's this slow pan to the right as Princess is sitting in her car, and she's looking out with sunglasses on, and I don't get it. What's her character? Is she a person trying to help her friends and family, or is she someone who wants power and money? Like, I really don't get her character. She's so fill in the blank. She's so typical for this type of film, and then she has the typical arc where, if you fly too close to the sun, you're going to get burnt. It's like, been there, done that. Princess gets randomly picked up by this guy in Los Angeles on the beach. And now this part blew my mind the first time I saw it. I was like, what the hell is happening now? He bumps into her on purpose, like in American Pie 2, if you ever saw that. Then he says, "You good?" Then she says, "Are you sure you good?" And then he says, "Do you need someone to talk to?" Because I can be that person. Everybody always ends up needing someone to talk to. And then he says, "Do you like tacos? I bet you like tacos. Let's go get some." And she goes on a date with this guy. Like, are you serious? This came out of nowhere. It's such a weird scene. I mean, I have some pretty bad experiences of asking girls out. I'm not going to get into those, obviously. And none of them worked, obviously, which is why they're bad. But I'm not judging what they're doing, but I highly doubt that this strategy would work on a real girl. So I'm going to actually try it out to see. I got one girl I like, and I'm talking to her already, and I'm not going to use it on her because I don't want to screw things up with her. But I got a couple of options, and I'm going to do a separate video where it's just me trying out this pickup strategy, and we'll see what happens. We never hear anybody's inner thoughts, but then halfway through the film, all of a sudden, we hear Princess's inner thoughts. Then her brother gets randomly killed, and it's revealed it was her best friend who brought her pimp there with her. Then Princess kills them both. The shooting effects in this movie are the worst part of the low-budgetness of the film. They looked fake as hell. They had this terrible sound effect that was with it, and, it was just, God, the shooting looked really bad. And then there's no emotion attached to that big event for me, which is a big problem because it's basically the climax of the film. And the climax does not feel climactic at all. A big problem smaller movies have is that they can have a lot of things happening really quickly, but then they have no lasting impact. She's lost these two people, her brother and her best friend. Then she just gets over it 2 minutes later. And then she gets into a confrontation with Omar, and she goes from crying to disinterested again. So all in all, chapter 1 is a fill-in-the-blank gangster story. And I would say the movie gets worse and worse as it goes on because it gets so muddled and so messy. I would say the worst scene of the whole movie. And it's not bad. It's not good in like a bad, good way. It's genuinely bad. It's the scene where the police captain, or whatever he is briefing his team about Princess and her enterprise. It's bad, and there's terrible lines like, "How does this gas station chick go from zero to hero?" Are you serious? I mean, what were they thinking? Just imagine if in The Godfather someone asked, "How did Michael Corleone go from zero to hero?" Like, nobody would take that seriously. Then the police guy says, "What happened to her brother?" Well, he's dead, right? I mean, she had some sort of a funeral brochure that she was stroking in the previous scene. So there must have been some sort of official memorial. Then his own detectives are questioning him and saying she can't be stopped because an object in motion stays in motion. There are so many cuts it feels like someone with ADD cut this scene. I would recast the head police guy if I were you, because he's really bad. He's easily the worst actor of the whole film. I mean, it didn't even feel like he was trying. It felt like just a guy who wanted to try out acting, and he's cashing his paycheck. The best actor in the movie is easily Maria, but of course I'm biased with her because she's the one I watched this film for, because she auditioned for my film. And believe me, even though she doesn't have much screen time in this one, she's a really fantastic actress, and I mean that. She's genuinely really, really good. And I can't wait to see her act more and possibly work with her in my film. Hopefully. She builds this team, Princess builds this team of people in this little montage sequence, and it once again feels like it should have been built up the whole movie, and it's rushed through. But there's barely 20 minutes left in the movie. The movie takes itself very seriously on one hand, but then on the other hand, they got this 10-year-old kid named Bug, and he's the team's hacking genius. Come on. I thought that was funny, but come on. Along with the distracting massaging in the opening scene, there's this funny part where a guy is literally playing with an orange like it's a ball or something. He's obsessed with it, and he's rolling around and staring at it and clutching it. He even takes it with him, I'm pretty sure, but they didn't really show it, so I don't know. And the voiceover was really obvious and bad in this scene. The audio is really out of sync, especially when it starts off. This could have worked better, I think, as a series rather than a movie. In fact, Chapter 2 felt like it jumped ahead several episodes, and I fell asleep or something, and I missed other episodes. It didn't really feel like a singular movie, unfortunately. Then there's this really cringeworthy scene where the hacker who works for Omar is questioning him, and Omar is like, "Why can't you ever be like, 'Good job, Omar. Great idea, Omar. You're the boss, Omar.'" He's so funny, but so bad at the same time when he plays a villain. Like, he is seriously like a cartoon. And the computer in his motel room has a screensaver with the company name that made this movie. I thought that was kind of stupid, too. That was kind of like, I mean, with 10 minutes left in the movie, they're still doing build-up. What they call on the plot scale of things, or what would you call that thing? The plot chart, the plot map. They're still doing rising actions when there's 10 minutes left in the film. That's not good. And out of nowhere, Princess teaches these Indian gangsters how to use the algorithm. I'm not even kidding when I say the scene looks like a computer commercial and sorry about that, and has music straight out of commercials. There were some really good shots I liked towards the end, like the one with the guys in the car, and also one where one of the cars pulls up to the big meeting at the end, and the sky looked really cool. It had this, like, I don't know, grayish, yellowish look, and it looked really cool. But then the scene that with the two guys in the car was totally ruined when they said Omar was doing something scandalous. And then what's Omar doing? He's literally just getting money from the ATM. And then I think he goes into a store. And they're like, he's got to be doing something scandalous. And then they get high. I mean, you see what I mean? There's just so many weird things like that. And then Omar says what I think is probably the funniest line in the film. You think I'm Boo Boo the Foo? I mean, come on. He's a cartoon. There was a cool moment where the bad guys and the good guys pulled up in front of each other in the parking lot. It looks a bit like a video game cutscene. And like it was going to end up with an Outsider-style rumble happening. If you guys haven't seen The Outsiders, basically like a big gang brawl. I thought that would have actually been cool to see, and it would have been better than what happened after that, which was like just a bunch of, twist, typical indie movie stuff where they have to have all these twists that really, they don't feel natural. They feel just kind of weak and lame, and they don't work with the film. The ending is confusing and queer. They have this twist where I guess the guy who picked up Princess at the beach was working with Omar the whole time, the taco guy, and he set up Princess somehow. I have no idea, honestly. They were clearly just building things up for a sequel, and that's where I'm going to end it. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I didn't really want to review this movie because, it's a smaller film, and it's not that bad, but I thought that it would be funny to do, and I hope it was. So please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of the female hustler, what you thought about that horrible pickup scene, which I can't wait to see what happens with that. And then please subscribe to our channel if you want to see more movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.